Good afternoon. Thank you, Mo, for the introduction. And of course, I would like to thank the IHPBA for the chance of being here today and present this, which has been my PhD thesis, but actually it is more than that, because it's actually it's coming from the hard work of an entire team in Verona for the last 3 decades dedicated to cystic lesion of the pancreas, which I would like to acknowledge. So as a disclosure, I would like to start from what we're not going to focus on today, meaning those entities clearly involving the main pancreatic duct. And the reason is quite easy, because whenever we scale, we saw it before during the IPMN session, the pros and the cons of going to surgery for this entity, the literature has already shown how the risk of harboring malignancy whenever the main pancreatic duct is involved is actually higher than that coming from the surgical resection. So they are indeed a major indication for surgery. However, we can definitely not apply this same statement for this small, usually incidentally found, and in most of the cases totally asymptomatic small cyst in the pancreas, which we think they are, we presume they are branched IPMN, but in Verona we prefer to call them holes in the pancreas. And I think that the image of a hole also actually provides us with the knowledge of the lack actually of evidence in their regards, as in this case we really don't know how to scale the pros and the cons of going to surgery. So we luckily have other type of holes, particularly here in Switzerland. Some holes, like those from Swiss cheese, they are of good quality. And as of good quality are the guidelines. We saw today which available guidelines we have. Some of them are now evidence-based, and they help clinicians in making their choice. At the same time, I think, and it has been clearly shown today, that still open questions remain for branched IPMN that we are in follow-up. First of all, how can we rely on predictors of malignancy while an IPMN is under observation? And second, can we possibly identify at least a subset of patients who might not require a lifelong follow-up? So we tried to assess those two questions by describing a large population of branched IPMN followed in Verona, and we wanted to define, first of all, how they grow, second, how they progress to malignancy, then how they pass from observation to surgery, and finally, what is the survival of this cohort of patients. And we were able to recruit during these 3 decades around 1,300 presumed branched IPMN. I'm not going to go through the global picture, which is, I would say, the typical branched IPMN population. I just want to underline, it's in the last line, how most of the patients have been conservatively managed. So the first aim was to assess how these cysts they grow. And of course, we have to call out all those who didn't have imaging available for review. And at this point, we have a big issue, because we cannot just drive, let's say, a ratio between the first and the last observation, because in this way, actually we would miss what's in between. So how are the variation of the diameter during the story so far? So we decided to assess a linear mixed model that is able to handle repeated data with an unequal number of repetitions for each patient. And thanks to this model, which has never been done for a branch like IPMN, we have been able to assess that high-risk stigmata, age, and baseline tumor, they all significantly impact on how these cysts they grow. Not only that, because we found, for example, that the median growth rate of the entire population was 0. That means, in other words, that we are not even able to detect any change during the follow-up. However, there is a small subset of these individuals who do have their cyst which grows, and the rate of this growth is around 2.4 milliliter per year, and we will see that this is a crucial factor also in predicting malignancy. But before doing that, we had to assess how these cysts they progress by actually showing worrisome feature and high-risk stigmata, and we confirmed the data from the literature that there is a small but significant risk, which is around 5% at 5 years, of developing such features. However, again, the take-home message is that the vast majority of these cysts, they will never show during the follow-up such features. Third endpoint, how do these cysts progress to malignancy? Well, in our cohort, and again confirming the literature which is already shown out there, the incidence of cancer was 1.7%, and the median time from baseline diagnosis to cancer development was around 43 months. However, the most relevant data is that when we assessed for predictor of malignancy, we found that growth rate was the sole independent predictor of malignancy, reinforcing its role during repeated observation. So at this point, we also wanted to provide with a more clinically meaningful message, so we defined a sort of a new entity. So we defined this trivial branch duct IPMN. What do we mean with that? So those are the presumed IPMN without worrisome feature or high-risk stigmata diagnosis that remain stable, meaning that they do not develop any feature for at least 5 years. So what happens to these guys? So basically, of course, as they are presumed branch duct IPMN, they can do cancer as well, because risk 0 doesn't exist. And as you can see, also trivial have an incidence of cancer of 1.5%. The median time from diagnosis is actually longer, it's around 8 years. And again, even in the trivial, the sole independent predictor of cancer was growth rate. But let's move another step forward. So how can we assess what is the actual risk of developing cancer in branch duct IPMN patients? So we had to go to registries, and we had to make a comparison between the general population and the individuals with an IPMN. Therefore, we use this standardized incidence ratio, which is the ratio between the number of cases observed in our study population on those expected in the general population, followed for the same time as a study population as well. And we found, not surprisingly, that presumed branch duct IPMN are at an increased risk of developing cancer than the general population. And so did the trivial. Therefore, we can again confirm that there is a higher risk of developing cancer. However, we have to keep in mind that the risk of cancer development in the pancreas increases with age. Therefore, if we compare just the trivial IPMN, who are actually on individuals of above 65 years old, then in this subset of patients, the risk of developing a cancer was not, in our cohort, higher than the age-matched general population. Then we analyzed how we decided to move from observation to surgery. So who were the ones who crossed over from observation to surgery? And we found, again, that the presence of symptoms of developing worrisome feature and again growth rate, which is actually the higher hazard ratio, were all factors related to the choice of shifting from observation to surgery for an overall survival that was, again, confirmed as it's already in the literature, which was extremely good. Almost 99% of disease-specific survival at 5 years. And again, factors independently associated with that were age, not surprisingly, and again, growth rate. So, to go into the end, open questions for branch duct IPMN remains. Going back to those first questions, I think that some key points can at least be raised. First of all, can we rely on additional predictor of malignancy during the surveillance? Well, I think that this project shows you that growth rate is truly a crucial factor, and I would say that really gives you the idea of the importance of repeated observation. So Roberto Salvia usually says that we don't have to look at a picture, we need to put picture together and looking at the movie. I think that growth rate is really what we're looking for when we watch at the movie. And finally, if we have to identify a subset for potential follow-up discontinuation, well, now we might have a cohort that might not have an increased risk of developing cancer, given the fact that zero risk doesn't exist just because these patients have a pancreas and a cyst on it. So that's it. I would like to thank all of you for your attention and my entire team in Verona for all the support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe, for this excellent presentation. I like the cheese. I'll ask if the audience have any questions. Yes, please.
Hi, David Linehan from the University of Rochester. Thanks, that was an excellent presentation. So am I right in saying that if the patient's greater than 65 years old and you've followed them for 5 years without growth, we can stop surveying them?
No, definitely that's not what I meant. So this actually comes from the debate that arose from the AGA guidelines. Okay, so maybe the AGA guidelines had the merits of at least trying to assess when to at least start considering stopping follow-up all these patients. So we found that in these individuals who have been completely stable for at least 5 years, and they are above 65 years old of age, the risk is still there, but this risk is not higher than the general population of the same age. So they might be potential target for that, but still we need more evidence to propose a follow-up discontinuation. Mm-hmm. But yeah, basically this is the rationale of the message.
And then the other question I would have is related to the growth rate. So you said the average is 2.4 millimeters per year?
No, not the average. The median was 0, meaning that we cannot even detect that the cyst is growing.
No, but the ones that do grow.
The one that do growth, then there is a 10% of these, so a small subset, who have a relevant growth rate of 2.4 millimeters. So these are the one who have a rapid cyst grow, and actually that was the factor related to malignancy and also survival.
Right, so the question is, if you're surveying those patients, just in a year they have a small amount of growth, and they're still less than 3 centimeters or 2 centimeters, would you still recommend an operation on those patients?
No, I would recommend to actually increase both the rate of observation, and also those are the targets you have to really want to be focused on. So for example, you want to do an endoscopic ultrasound on them and let's say, observe them. So it's just like an alarm.
So it's an alarm, but you stick to the recommendations of the consensus, which is any high-risk features such as duct dilatation, mural nodules, or anything like that. But those ones you're just saying need a closer eye on them.
Correct.
Okay,
I would target them, yeah.
Thanks, excellent talk.
Thank you so much.
Okay, many thanks, Giovanni. Very interesting discussion, and I think the quest about the best management of IPMNs is still open, and we know about them as much as we don't know about them. So thank you very much, Giovanni.
Thank you.